right now is the new series of books I'm writing. I'm still on the risk management framework courses, so those books are coming. I'm going to be on the third book here real soon. That one's going to take me a lot longer to write. It's a lot more research, a lot deeper dives into the content. So that it's just going to take a lot longer to do. But these two, these two books, excuse me, is about cybersecurity, resume marketing, actually just building out your career and in cybersecurity, getting into cybersecurity, how to upgrade yourself. This is stuff I've been doing for a very long time. So it's just natural to me to do this one. But let me show you guys what I've got so far. So in the first book where I'm going to release, it's going to tell you how to market yourself, how to take your resume to the next level. I tell you what type of resume you should use, what format you should use, and it's going to have downloadables that come with the book. And I go into the different career paths of the resume. So not just the resume writing, but I want to give you all the tools that you need to actually choose the right career path and then upgrade that career path. So here's the first book. I just break down everything you should put on your resume, how you should word it, how to find the wording for cybersecurity in particular, how to get your foot in the door. I'm giving you an inside scoop from somebody who's inside the game and telling you how to come in, how to come in the door. I'm unlocking the door for you, so walk right in. And then the second book, let me see if I can grab the second. These are drafts, by the way. I have not released these yet. I'm still working on them. I got to get everything right. I got to do lots of research. So the next book is called Cybersecurity Jobs Careers. And what I do is I break down one of the things that people don't really talk about in cybersecurity. If you happen to be on social media, there's just like this huge, cybersecurity is just very popular right now because we just need so many people in this career field. And there's this huge push from our government, from the U.S. government. There's a huge push from the industry to get more people into cybersecurity. There's just not enough people doing this work, and it pays really well. So that makes for really good content. So people are like, oh, I'm going to make $100,000. I'm going to show you how to make $200,000. I'm going to show you how to do this contract for $200,000. And you don't need any experience. You don't need this. You don't need that. And a lot of stuff they're saying is true because this market's super hot. But what they don't talk about, they talk about hacking, they talk about all this kind of cool stuff that's cool in cybersecurity. But what they don't talk about is that there's many different categories of cybersecurity. What I mean to say is what you're looking at on my screen. If you happen to be watching me, if you're listening, I will explain what I'm talking about here. Is that there's different categories of cybersecurity. And let me just read. There's a top 7 cybersecurity categories, and there actually is a couple more that the organization that I'm dipping from doesn't even talk about, and I'll talk about those too in the book. But there's analyze, the cybersecurity category of analyze. There's collect and operate. There's investigate. There is operate and maintain, and there's oversee and govern, protect and detect, and then securely provision. So what I want to do is I'm going to take one of these categories and I want to break this down so you can understand what I'm talking about. What I want you to understand is that cybersecurity is not just hacking. Say it with me. It's not just hacking. It's a lot more. There's a lot more stuff that goes into this. As a matter of fact, you've got to have a certain level of emotional maturity to do this job. I would say that's one of the caveats that a lot of people don't talk about. I don't know why they don't. Maybe it's haven't been doing this long enough. I don't know. But let me tell you, cybersecurity takes a high level of emotional intelligence. I'm talking about being patient. I'm talking about being able to speak to people in a respectful manner, being able to deal with difficult people, being able to manage your time effectively, being able to manage stress, because it can be a high stressful job. Like one of the things that people don't talk about is you're making 100,000. Sometimes you are dealing with difficult people. You're dealing with stressful situations. If you happen to be a person who's a problem solver who can deal with difficult customers in a very respectful way. I'm not talking about DMV, right? You go to DMV, people are very they're not paid very well. You are being paid well. So you need to remain a professional at all times, right? Because you're talking to C-level execs for corporations, for organizations, for departments, for agencies. You're talking to customers. You're talking, there's money on the line when you speak, right? With cybersecurity. That's what we're talking about here. So let me uh tell you about break down one of these categories. So the categories, let me show you a little like a diagram that breaks all this down. The categories are broken out into specialty areas. And just to give you an example of what we're talking about here, this is all in the book. That's what I'm scrolling through. These are all the certifications that are approved certification list. I talk about all this stuff in the book. But the categories are broken down. You've got 7 categories, the ones I just mentioned, but then those break out into specialty areas. And I think maybe the best way I can describe what I mean by specialty areas is just show you, just deep dive into one of these. So let me just take digital forensics, investigations. So investigate cybersecurity category. This category, it focuses on things like fraud, cyber crime, also people doing malicious activity on networks, and then investigating. Think CSI, right? This is the CSI branch of cybersecurity, right? This is one that's not talked about a lot. They always hacking, hacking, hacking. How do I do hacking? Hacking, hacking, hacking. That's all they talk about. But or little tricks on how to hack and all, and that stuff is cool. When I first got in this field, that's all I wanted to do too. But it's what I found out having done this since 2000 is that there's a lot more to it. There's so much depth to this field. One of those is investigations. And the first thing you think of is CSI. And that's a great example of what we're talking about here. CSI, crimes, special investigations, right? Well, they typically CSI is a real thing. It's not just a show. They have a branch of the show, the series called CSI Cyber, where they just all talk about just cyber crimes and stuff, right? So these are guys who work with not only agencies like FBI, the Justice Department, and things like that, but they also work with intelligence. They work with the local police departments. So they're doing that kind of stuff. These are the guys who take your hard drive. Like they'll take let's say there's a criminal ring of people doing human trafficking, right? And all of the human trafficking circles are on databases. They bust down, the cops have a warrant, they bust down a door and they find this ring of human traffickers, right? That's somewhere in Iowa or something. Like this is all speculation and BS. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. Okay. So let's say they bust down this door, they have a warrant, they've been tracking this guy for years. They go in there, there's nobody in there, but there's computers, right? It looks like they fled the scene, but there's computers all over the place. They would the police officers who bust down the door, they're going to take everything in that house into custody, including the hard drives. They're going to take those hard drives. They're going to take all the computers. Hard drive is a component within a computer. They're going to take all the computers back to their lab, and then somebody like yourself, a cybersecurity person who's a specialist in forensics, a digital forensics specialist, is going to take that hard drive out and then put it in a device, run some software on it, and be able to see anything they've ever done. So even if they attempted to erase all the hard drives before they fled the scene, a forensics person might be able to retrieve all the data that was deleted off that computer by just seeing all the ones and zeros. So that is an example of one branch of cybersecurity known as, the whole branch is called investigate, because it's what they do is they cast this big umbrella and then they put specialty areas underneath that umbrella. In this case, you've got one is cyber investigations and the other one is digital forensics. Now, for cyber investigations, that specialty area is looking at the tactics, techniques, and procedures for a full range of investigative tools. And some of the things that they're going to do is things like cyber crime investigators. So in this case, you might, if you happen to be in the criminal justice system, if you happen to be in law enforcement, If you happen to have done this in a past life, been a police officer, and you want to go into, if you want to transition into cybersecurity, this might be great for you because you already have a what is it called? A justice degree, a criminal justice degree, man. I'm slipping. Criminal justice degree. You could leave that on your resume and start talking about all the tools that you know, or all the IT that you know. Like you could actually get smart on IT stuff and bring that to the table when you're going to a cyber investigation position. So one of the work roles that they have is cyber crime investigators and cyber criminal investigators. That includes digital forensics. So you'll be right there with the officers investigating a case. You are part of the investigative team. Now, another one that people are a little bit more aware of would be digital forensics. Now, if you want to know what we're talking about here, just look at that show called CSI. That's what they're talking. That's what we're talking about here. The digital guys, like not the guys who are looking at corpses and stuff like that, because that's another part of forensics, right? But digital forensics is actually analyzing, preserving the computers that are going to be involved with figuring out what's going on with this case, right? Taking that data that's going to be used in the investigation. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about investigate. Now, what I do in this book is not only do I break down what's called it's called cybersecurity workforce. So cybersecurity workforce is it's an initiative that's coming from a federal organization within the United States because they see that there's this huge need for helping out cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is there's not enough people doing cybersecurity right now. All right. So what they did was, this was years ago, by the way. This is almost 10 years ago. We've been hurting for people for that long. In case in point, whenever I go to a new job, I'm having to do 2 or 3 different things because there's not enough people doing this. There's not enough people doing this work. We don't have enough people. Now I know there's a recession stuff and it's starting to slow down. And it is. That's the truth. It is the field is starting to slow down a bit and thin out. But they're hiring less people, but they still need cybersecurity people to do this work, right? So it's called cyber security workforce. And what they did was they broke the whole cybersecurity, the whole umbrella down in different parts, the 7 parts. One of which is investigation, the one I've just been talking to you about. And they break that down into categories further, like specialty areas within that category. And then they break that down by work roles. So what I do in my book is I actually explain what let me switch this camera. Okay. What you need to do this job. If you were interested in this particular position, now there's way more stuff in cybersecurity than just investigations. If you're not a technical person, if you don't want to do forensics, if that doesn't float your boat or whatever, there's other things you can do. But let me just stay on this one for a little bit. So there's other work. What I do is I further analyze the different work roles that are within this particular category. And there's many different names for it. There's digital network exploitation. Ignore the misspellings. I'm literally writing this thing as we speak. I'm literally writing this. What I do is there's a process to this. So I've got to write it, bang it out real quick. And then I've got to proofread my own stuff. And then I send it to an editor. And there's this whole thing, right? I got to send it to somebody to get it edited and then somebody to format it and everything. So now that stuff takes time and money. Anyway, what I also do is I talk about, I do a deeper dive into this particular job. And I'll say, okay, what are the certifications, the degrees, the education level and experience that a person has to have? So I'll go ahead and break all of that down. So here are some of the certifications that you need. Now, I've done a little bit of forensics. I've kind of been on the edges of it. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm some kind of a forensics expert. What I can say is that my experience was in something called cybersecurity analyst work, where we had to do a little bit of forensics, but not enough to call myself a forensics guy. Like we did a little bit, like we worked with tools where we were pulling in we're pulling in log files, and then we have to investigate like whether or not it's an incident. Now that right there in and of itself is not considered forensics. But when we pull that, sometimes what we have to do is go deeper. And if we know it's an incident, what we have to do is take the actual packet apart. Like that's a packet is how do I explain a packet? A packet is how data is being pulled over the internet, for a lack of a better simpler explanation. And we have to pull that packet apart and actually see the raw data inside of the packet and determine whether or not it's malicious. So that right there, that's forensics, right? So I would do a little bit of forensics where I'm using different tools to do that. But then when it got heavy, I would go ahead and send it over to our forensics team. Like we worked back to back with a forensics team. Now, another thing I talk about here is my interactions with the daily life of a person within the investigate category, and then some of the tools that they have to use. And then I talk about my experience with this. And my experience is pretty brief. Is where I would discover something, and then I'd be like, okay, this right here. And you know what? I'll just go ahead and tell you guys one of the stories. Okay. One of the, when I've dealt with this 2 times. So one of the times was I was on help desk many years ago in the Air Force, and we get called in to troubleshoot this hard drive. And we're just doing regular fix actions on it. Like it just won't, it keeps rebooting. So we're trying to figure out what's going on. So we think it's a virus. So what you do is run a local scan on that system. This is way back. So it's like Windows 98 or something, you know? So we run a scan on the system, and we're like, man, okay, there's some kind of virus on it. Let's see where the virus is. So we go into the drive where the virus is located, and there's a bunch of pornography on this system. Not uncommon. I mean, I was in the military. Some people would do stuff they're not supposed to do. This we would usually just laugh about it and just delete it and slap on the wrist and be gone. But this time, it was the type of pornography that you are not supposed to have on your computer, that nobody's supposed to have. So it was, and just use your imagination on what it was. I don't want to mention it on this live, but so what we have to do is, number one, we have to confiscate the computer. We confiscated the computer. We take the system back to our place, and we got to give it to a forensics person, because they've got to take that into evidence, take it into custody, and then can start doing an investigation. Is what they found true? Is it there? Isolate it, take it into court. This person's going to get kicked out of the military. This person's going to be a registered sex offender for the rest of their life. This person, it's a bad move. I don't recommend doing that. So, and I think you can figure out what kind of stuff they found on that computer. That happened more than once in my career field. In my career, it happened more than once. Like, it's rare, but it does happen. It's crazy that people put that on their work. I mean, there's something's really wrong with you if you're doing that on your work system. Number one, doing that at all, really, but they're literally doing it on their system. And it's like, what are you doing? Because they monitor everything on a military installation. Like you can't, if you log into your email or Gmail account, they can see that stuff. Like, don't do stuff like that on any computer. It's like, I don't understand. Anyway, that's what happened. So that was forensics. That was one of my first run-ins with forensics. Like, we found something that was illegal. We had to confiscate the computer. The dude was arrested. All the whole 9 yards. Ugly, man. So I just wanted to show you guys like that one field. Okay, I've got somebody saying hacking, pen testing, red teaming is offensive security. Defensive security is easing in to start. Defensive security is easier to start in. Yeah, that's true. I can't argue with that. There's a lot more, I would say there's a lot more technical skills and a lot more creative know-how if you're doing pen testing and red teaming. And for those of you who don't know, and that's in this list, by the way, but for those of you who don't know, pen testing, red teaming, hacking, it is Definitely a huge field in and of itself, and it's necessary for helping organizations conduct assessments, because organizations, once they have all the controls in place, they want to make sure, okay, are we still safe? So they'll use somebody to do what's called penetration testing or red teaming, where they pretend to be the op and then try to infiltrate the system to see if they can get in different ways. It's a really great way to actually it's a really great way to test your network, test your system to make sure that there's no bugs. Somebody else asked me, Don Young says, what are the minimum requirements to apply? To apply for any job, to apply for any job. So the minimum requirements depends on the actual job you're doing. For forensics, they usually require some level of experience for forensic. I'm being perfectly honest here with you. There's certain parts of cybersecurity that lends itself to having some level of experience. And the reason why forensics is normally going to have some level of of experience is because there's so many other things you have to know to even analyze the data that you're going to be finding. To use a tool, for example, like in case, there's some things that you need to know before you can even touch that software. However, there are internships. So if you are trying to get in forensics, and I'll take forensics, and I'll mention a couple other avenues of security that you could go into. So if you're trying to go entry level, but minimum requirements of forensics. Let's talk about that one first. So minimum requirements. What we find is what I found was some of the jobs. What I do is I'll take one section, forensics is an example, and I start analyzing what the market right now is looking for. And so the stuff that you see on the screen, and I'll explain it for those of you who are listening. And let me see if I can switch this camera around. Let me see if I can switch the camera around for. I got to find a better way to do this with TikTok. Uh, these are some of the these are some of the certifications that they're looking for whenever they're looking for people who are digital forensics specialists. Here's some of the tools that they want you to know: in case, FTC, sleuth kit, sift, and some others. But what they look for first and foremost, just like most career fields, is experience. They want experience over degrees, experience over certifications, all that kind of stuff. So they're typically looking for a couple of years of experience, having done some sort of forensics. So for as an example, I did I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this since for 20 years. But I could, on my resume, I could probably say that I had about a good year of forensic stuff. And I could say that I know a couple of the tools on that list. I know TCP dump. I used that before. I don't know in case, like they weren't really in case, FTC. I didn't use those ones, but I used snort. I used some of the network forensic stuff. I would probably be able to get an entry level position as a forensics guy, right? They'd have to teach me some of the other stuff. But that said, entry level forensics guys, they do pretty good. Like they're at least six figures, but they're expecting you to come to the table with a real good, solid understanding of things like networking, of how computers work. Like, think about it. As a forensics guy, you got to take a computer apart to take one component out, the hard drive, and you got to put it, and then you've got to know the difference between a hard drive, RAM, um, and the CPU, and then which ones are storing the information, how quickly you can get the information off once you turn the computer off. There's just certain things you have to know before you, so it's not really an entry level position. However, if you happen to be working on a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, there are internships that you could probably do to get into forensics. So entry level minimum requirements. That's what I would say about that. Let me see if I have any more stuff to expand on for this book that's incoming. I would say that if you are an entry level person, if you are trying to get into cybersecurity at all, um, probably one of the best areas to start with is customer service. So customer service is included in in one of the categories of, let me see if I can switch this camera real quick. Bear with me here, guys. So under a category known as maintain and operate, or is it operate and maintain? Let me see. Operate and maintain. They have a category called operate and maintain. And this one breaks down in the specialty areas, the following specialty areas. You've got customer service, you've got data admin, which is DBAs. You've got knowledge management, network services, system administrator, and you may recognize some of these. But one of the best ways to get in this field, if you get so many questions about people wanting to get in this field, one of the best ways is customer service and technical support, also known as customer support, also known as help desk. There's many different field tech. There's many different names for this, but customer support, help desk, service support, very, very important to getting to any organization needs this particular category. And so they include this in cybersecurity because in order to maintain, I mean, one of the main things that you have to do for a system is have a team to maintain the system on a regular basis. So that's why they include it. So as a customer service person, as a database administrator, as a network services person, you on a regular basis, you're going to have to implement security patches. That's part of security. You're going to have to update the virus definition. That's part of security. You're going to have to reconfigure the system to make it secure and make sure you get rid of things like default passwords. That's also part of security. So all of that stuff is part of security, and that's why they put it under the umbrella of operate and maintain. So customer service is, if you're entry level, is one of the best ways because it's just the range of it. It has such a huge range of people who, in some cases, you don't have to have a degree or experience to get in. You can have just a GED and be willing to work. And of course, you have to do your homework. You need to know some IT stuff. But if you hit the books, you can actually understand the stuff so you can get in. They can give you OJ on the job training. And then voila, you have experience and you can start building up your resume.